Lo mismo, si está to familiarize yourself with Zoom, many of us, as I'm looking at the participant list, are familiar with Zoom. So you know how to mute, stop and start your video at your discretion, and then utilize the chat box. So the agenda for today's meeting, and just to confirm, just give me a thumbs up if you can hear me and see my screen. I probably should have done that first. Okay, perfect, thank you. So just in general, the welcome opening remarks, we're gonna do the meeting a little bit backwards. We're gonna do reminders first, and that since that tends to be at the end of meetings, just so that we can get that off done early. We're gonna do a very brief review on Title I, and that's specifically because there's already been a very detailed meeting that occurred earlier. So in the interest of time, we wanna save the time for the items that we wanna cover today. Throughout the presentation, there'll be several polls to get your input on different things that we'll be talking about, as well as the bulk of the meeting will be a brainstorm session about the Title I funds, about how we will use it, and then we'll talk about next steps. En la agenda de hoy tengamos los comentarios, que es lo que estoy haciendo ahora. Vamos a hacer los recordatorios primero, porque siempre lo hacemos al final y así ya sabemos lo que tenemos pendiente. Vamos a repasar brevemente la función de título 1, ya que hubo una reunión anterior que lo cubrió en detalle. En la presentación habrá diferentes actividades y encuestas para poder conocer cuáles son las preferencias del grupo, y vamos a cerrar con los próximos pasos. The meeting objective is to identify your preferences, parent preferences, and share ideas on how to utilize Title I, that 1% parent involvement fund, and we'll review what that is. El objetivo de la reunión es identificar las preferencias de los padres y compartir ideas de cómo utilizar los fondos del 1% que está alocado para la participación de los padres. There isn't a very large crowd here, but just so that we all are in understanding on the meeting procedures for the PAC meetings. In fairness to everyone, we ask that you not speak until you're recognized by the chairperson. Try to limit your response to 2 minutes, just to ensure maximum participation. And then if we need a timer, if someone's being very lengthy, we'll exercise the right to use the timer. But again, the idea is that we hear from as many people as possible and that we're fair to one another in sharing our ideas and our time. La declaración del procedimiento de la reunión, para garantizar que todo el mundo tenga la oportunidad de compartir y de compartir sus ideas, le vamos a decir que por favor no hable hasta que la reconozca el presidente y que trate de limitar su comentario a 2 minutos o menos. El propósito es para que todo el mundo tenga la oportunidad de compartir y charlar y compartir sus ideas. So we'll jump right into the reminders. And I'm going to go really fast in the beginning. Voy rápido en el principio porque quiero tener tiempo para el final de compartir ideas. So our parent coordinator sent out an email with the parent survey. Please complete the survey if you haven't already done so, or ask our parent friends to complete the survey. The survey is asking for parent preferences. This survey is very important. It actually informs this particular meeting as well as other things that are going on in the school related to workshops. So please encourage everyone to complete the survey. La coordinadora de padres mandó una encuesta para los padres. Es muy importante que lo completen si no lo han completado. La información que vamos a colectar en esta encuesta es muy importante para saber cuáles son los talleres que vamos a utilizar y también para esta reunión. So SLT originally is scheduled for the first Monday of the month. It was rescheduled to the 21st. So please, reminder that is taking place on Monday, December 21st. And then I know we just had the PSA meeting on Thursday, but if you haven't done so, please reminder to try to join the Google Classroom and the distribution list. The Title I PAC will be partnering with the PSA and posting the updates to the PSA Google Classroom. So Title I PAC related updates will be in the PSA Google Classroom. So it's very important that you join. El PAC de Título 1 va a utilizar la aula de Google Classroom de la Asociación de Padres para poner los recordatorios ahí. So es muy importante que se unan a esa página. Okay. So briefly for Title I review. So I'm actually going to, if you give me one moment, I'm going to upload to the chat the documents. So as I mentioned, this review is really brief because there was a more comprehensive presentation that occurred earlier this year. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to upload into the chat the presentations with the materials that were shared during that meeting, so that if anyone needs a minute to review, I'm actually going to give you time to review it briefly. You can take a moment and just go over that, kind of sift through the presentation and take a look at the detailed information. The files are loading now. But the short version while we're here is that Title I provides federal funding for the education of low-income students. It's really all about, the focus is on improving student achievement. And the goal of the PAC is a consultative group that represents the body of parents, Title I parents. And our primary goal is to ensure like the effective involvement of parents in Title I programming and activities within the school. So we group with the school administration, we consult with the school administration, staff, parents, as well as the SLT. Acabo de subir dos presentaciones, una en inglés y en español, en la caja de chat, para que puedan revisar si necesitan revisar la presentación que hicieron anterior al principio del año relacionado con el título 1. Ya que en esta reunión queremos usar el tiempo para el final para hablar de cómo vamos a utilizar el fondo. So le voy a dar tiempo para poder revisar esa información para que se acuerden de qué se trata. Pero en simple forma, el título 1 se trata de mejorar la educación de los estudiantes. Y el PAC, que es esta reunión, es un grupo representante de padres que tenemos la responsabilidad de consultar con los grupos de la escuela, como la principal o la administración, el equipo liderazgo escolar, con todo lo que está relacionado con la programación de título 1. So let me just close this. So le voy a dar un tiempecito. Or give me, I guess, use the, or give me a thumbs up, I guess, if you feel like you need more time to review the stuff that I loaded, or if you'd like me to continue, for those of you that have it on, or let me know in the chat box if you need time to review. Le mandé la información. Me dejan saber en la caja de chat, o si tienen el video prendido, si tienen el video me dejan saber si quieren el tiempo para revisar la información o si quieren que siga.
Disculpa, pero yo no veo en la caja de chat lo que usted está diciendo.
En el chat no ve un folleto que dice PS 376 Title I. Ok, so ahora me acaban de decir que el documento es bastante grande y se toma mucho tiempo para bajar, entonces puede que sea que tiene que esperar. ¿Quiere que espere un tiempo para poder verlo o?
No, si quiere puede continuar.
Okay, so I'm going to go by the comments that I have here, and I will continue. just so everyone is aware, the information that's in the document outlines what Title I is, what the function is, and what we are and aren't allowed to use the funds for. De forma breve, el documento deletrea cuál es la función del título 1 y cómo podemos utilizar los fondos y cuál es la función de este grupo. Okay. So before we talk about the size, I just actually want to check in with everybody. Let me see if this works. I'm going to launch a poll really quickly and let me see and tell me if you can see it. And you'll have some time. I just want to get an understanding of where everybody's at with their knowledge of the Title I pack, Do you see the poll? Okay. The question is, I understand the role of the Title I pack. Entiendo el papel del pack título 1. Okay, we have a few more people that we need to chime in. Okay. Annie, you can type your response into the chat box. This is merely a check-in, so if you're okay.
I think she's getting an error response with the download.
Oh, okay. Not with the poll.
Yeah.
Okay. Is everyone seeing that?
No, it's with the poll. It's saying it's not submitting it.
Okay.
But
Yeah,
I'll
it's
put
not. This is not formal, so you could just let us know in the chat box what your response is.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Okay, so can everybody see the results? So it's a mix between yes and so. It makes sense that there's still some confusion. It is a lot of information. But I do encourage everyone to kind of review that document. It's really hard to repeat all of it within the time frame that we have, especially for this meeting. So for those of you that are still unclear, if you feel comfortable, just let me know in the chat box and I'm happy to like reconnect and have like a separate kind of review and revisit for everyone. Okay, so one of the topics we wanted to cover today for as part of this meeting is related to the size of the pack. So because our school is, we have a school-wide based Title I program. By default, everyone, so all parents are members of the pack. And so in this regard, I wanted to get a sense of what everyone's preference is regarding the size of the pack. Obviously, today we don't have very many parents, but in theory, everyone is a member of the pack. So I am going to launch another kind of poll to get a sense of preference on the size. So as I said today, all parents are members of the pack, but we do have the options to establish a smaller pack with parent representatives from each respective grade and group, which includes English language learners, students with IEP or gifted and talented. And the idea behind the smaller pack is that with those representatives, we are collectively making decisions on behalf of the larger parent constituency. So una de las cosas que queríamos dialogar hoy es entender las preferencias de los padres relacionado con el tamaño del PAC. Actualmente, porque el título 1 aplica a nivel escolar, todos los padres actualmente son miembros del PAC. Pero tenemos la opción de establecer un PAC más pequeño con representantes de cada grado y grupo. Son los estudiantes que están aprendiendo inglés, estudiantes con IEP, y los de GNT, de los dotados y talentosos. Y la idea es que ese grupo más pequeño toma las decisiones en el bienestar de los padres, del grupo de padres. Entonces, cada representante está representando los grupos y toma las decisiones por el grupo. Entonces también voy a hacer una encuesta para ver cuáles son las preferencias del tamaño del pack para tener idea. So I'm going to launch this poll. Let's see if that works. Annie, if you're still having trouble with the response, again, you can, if you feel comfortable, you can let me know in the chat, or I can connect with you separately and you can let me know your preference. Just give me a thumbs up if you can see the poll. And it says select the option that best reflects your preferences on the size of Title I pack. Seleccione la opción que mejor refleje su preferencia sobre el tamaño del pack de título 1. Do you see the poll? Okay, there we go. It's coming through. And just so you know, again, I'm just trying to get a sense of the preference. It doesn't necessarily mean we're going one way or the other. I just need to understand where everybody's at with their mindset regarding the size of the pack.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, absolutely.
So what's the benefit of one versus the other, and what is the drawback? And maybe we could hear from people who have experience with this. Title I pack.
Sure, I think that's an excellent question. La pregunta es cuál es el beneficio y cuáles son las desventajas de cada uno. This meeting fundamentally, oh, I see, she's coming back in, is how we would operate as the pack with the first option, right? So all parents are welcome, and you still are, in the decision-making process. So it would work very much in this way where, at least the way I'm envisioning, which is why I keep asking about preferences, you're all welcome to chime in. In a meeting, I would probably, anything that requires a decision would be, we would vote on it by way of a poll and so forth. And everyone would be involved, and it requires the organization of these kinds of meetings. The smaller pack obviously would arrange, not obviously, they would meet separately, review what our options are as far as activities and spending, and then present it to the larger organization, but they would be making decisions on behalf of the larger group. So again, that's why I'm asking about preferences, but for all intents and purposes, we are operating right now under option 1. Perhaps some may feel that with a smaller group, you may be able to move more swiftly, but again, that's up for debate depending on what you prefer. Let me just say it in Spanish really quickly so that everyone can kind of be on the even playing field. En términos de la ventaja o desventaja, actualmente estamos funcionando debajo de opción 1. Todos los padres forman parte del PAC. Y en términos de función sería como estamos operando ahora mismo con esta reunión. Cada vez que tenemos que hacer una decisión, lanzaremos una encuesta para que todo el mundo participe y dé su opinión en términos de cualquier decisión que tenemos que hacer relacionado con los fondos o programas y actividades. Tendremos reunión de la igual forma y funcionaremos como estamos ahora. La opción 2 es un grupo más pequeño, también se reúnen, pero hacen las decisiones y votan entre ese grupo y luego informan a todos los padres de la decisión. So I'm not sure if I said it the same way. With the smaller pack would discuss what the options are. They would make the decision and then relay the information to the larger constituency. But the idea is that the active representatives are actually getting information from the parent constituency to make those decisions on behalf of the parents. So it's very much like having a liaison. So if you'd like, I can end the poll and relaunch it now that you have more information, and you can go ahead and vote again if you feel that maybe now with more information that you feel like you would change your response.
I have
Ms.
one
Fox has
question.
a comment.
Sorry, I heard 2 voices, so I want to make sure I think I heard Ms. Roden.
Is that Ms. Foss?
Okay, sorry.
Yes, that was me.
Okay, Ms.
Okay.
Foss, she said she had a comment.
Yes. So I was kind of thinking, I like a half and half version almost. You know, something the PSA have been talking about is getting a parent coordinate or a class parent program going for next year. And I mean, it could be interesting if maybe that class parent serves on the committee for Title I. And then like you said, then they would like basically represent the constituency, similar to kind of how there's the executive board with the PSA, but we still present everything to the constituency to be voted on. Like, I feel like it's kind of a mix. I want like a mix of the two options. Does that make sense?
Yes, I'm gonna restate it just so essentially, like I said, like a hybrid. So you still want parent representatives, but you still want the option to kind of group. It's like an executive board, regroup, decide on what we think we want to present to the larger constituency, and then have everybody vote on
Yes.
decisions. Okay.
Yeah.
Let me just, la propuesta que hace la señora Mary Louise Price Foss es que le gustaría un formato híbrido que es una mezcla de las dos opciones que acabamos de presentar, que es formar el grupo más pequeño, como cada padre o tutor de cada clase. Ese grupo se reúne, dialoga sobre las decisiones, toma la decisión o no toma la decisión, hacen la propuesta y después se lo presentan a todos los padres, y los padres como quiera hacen la decisión, votan y hacen la decisión. And then was there someone else that was wanting to comment? Okay.
Stacy wanted to comment, but I think she voted in the chat.
Okay, so let's see. So Stacy's question is, how many people would be in number 2? In theory, la pregunta es cuántas personas, si vamos con la opción 2, cuántas personas formarían parte del grupo. In theory, if you have a parent for each grade, right? We have 6 grades, right? Kindergarten through 5th. So at minimum 6, because each parent, there could be overlap with the special groups, right? So within those grades, a parent can have a child with an IEP, an English language learner, and gifted and talented, or all of the above. So at minimum 6. But I would say maximum, I believe 11, and I have to look through the documentation to see. But if you think about it, I mean, we have 13 participants now at the moment. If we on average are operating in the same way through the rest of the year, essentially, it's pretty much option 1 because it's open to everyone. But I don't want to influence anybody. I'm going to share the results just so you know. Obviously, there isn't a larger group here, but you can see that everyone did not vote, but this is where we're at with that preference.
Can I comment?
Absolutely.
I wrote another comment in the chat, and I mean, my concern is that if we just leave it to like natural forces of who has time to show up, I just feel like who's here today is a good example of it being overrepresented by maybe G&T parents, or maybe overrepresented by the younger grades. So I do like the idea of making sure that we have representatives from like 5th grade and from Gen Ed and ELL and IEP. So, I mean, I sort of agree with Mary Louise, but I think I just want to make sure we discuss the fact that if we leave it to this kind of everybody, it doesn't actually include everybody. Andreina, you're muted.
Sorry. So I said I understand the sentiment, and I agree with it in practice. In theory, I would say, but in practice, this is an example of sort of what we're dealing with, that it's contingent upon people volunteering and actually wanting to take on the role. So I do agree that I think that's the idea behind establishing the smaller PAC, right? That you have representatives from each, and so we're hearing from everyone. But it's the same challenge that we have, I think, across the board, that if we don't have those folks coming and participating, then what do we do with that? Then we're kind of at a standstill and we can't move forward. Or not that we can't, but we're sort of in that situation. So I agree, but I think it's more about who's coming in, who's showing up, and that's probably a separate thing that we would have to work on figuring out.
Right.
How do we get that participation?
Yeah, I think if you identified people from each group, then you'd have to be like, okay, when can we meet, and not have it be a time when the rest of us can meet, I guess, you know?
Yes. So let me just, for the benefit of everyone, just quickly share that out with everyone. El comentario fue relacionado que en teoría la segunda opción sería mejor porque tendríamos representación de todos los grupos en la escuela, ¿verdad? Entonces no sería, como estaba comentando yo, que mira quién está participando en la reunión, en realidad siempre es el mismo grupo. Pero si lo hacemos de esta forma, la opción 1, el que se presenta y el que esté es que está participando y puede ser que un grupo esté representado más que otro. Entonces, la opción 2 es una forma de tener equidad en la representación, que cada grupo está representado. Uno de los problemas con eso es que para hacer esa opción tenemos que tener la participación de los padres en cada función de eso. O sea, necesitamos cada padre en cada grado y para poder tener ese requisito. Entonces, ese es uno de los problemas que tenemos en términos de participación para poder hacer eso. Okay. So I think this is, I'm feeling this is worth conversation, but I think for the time being, do we even have, I don't think that we even have that level of representation right now within the participants. So we're pretty, I would say right now we're kind of the status quo, but I can bring this forth, or we can continue to brainstorm or create a forum for how could we, if we wanted to at a later point, how could we make that happen? What would be some ways that we can do that? I mean, unless folks have ideas now, I would welcome that conversation now.
Andreina, I'm sorry, because I'm on the phone. It's Tiffany, the PSA
Yes.
president. I just wanted to say maybe try to ask them to send a robocall right before your meeting, because I know I didn't get one. Usually a lot of parents hop on when they hear that right before, and maybe like backpack some flyers or something like that to get more parent engagement.
Okay, thank you. Fue la
And
sugerencia.
maybe on the flyer, you could put the information of what Title I is, because I know a lot of people don't even know what it actually, you know, the function, you know?
Yeah, so I mean, the challenge there is that I agree, but I think earlier there's been like a multitude of meetings trying to explain that. So I think the challenge is that even Title I in itself is complex. To try to fit it in like a flyer is a little bit of a challenge, but I agree with you regarding just the promotion of it and emphasizing the importance of what this is and what these meetings are. So I agree with you, but I think maybe perhaps we could partner up on that, since I know that the PSA is also working on a similar initiative regarding parent involvement. It's essentially the same thing that we're trying to achieve. So I think we can partner up on that.
Andreina, I wanted to say maybe, I know last year what we kind of did with both was kind of piggyback at the end of the meeting. Maybe if you would be able to access the parents that we have during our meetings to kind of pose this question, because, you know, it
So
might be a way to act, you know, to get more, you know, more
Yeah.
voices heard.
Yeah, I
I know
agree.
we can't do it right now because we're having this meeting, but maybe going forward, maybe if you want to drop this, like revisit this idea at the end of our, or at the beginning of our PSA meeting next year, maybe you might be able to get a little bit more feedback from parents in other grades versus who's just showing up now. And then maybe we could, even if, I'm just talking out, and you'd have to like really discuss it and meet separately with us and
Yeah.
have everybody in consensus. But maybe even if just carve out a part of our time to kind of put this need out there for more representation during this meeting, if you wanted to have it at a separate time. Because I know last year Angie kind of like would just piggyback one meeting after the other and just use the same population.
Yeah.
I mean,
So
and I know it's two different things, but
No, but it's in theory and in practice, it should be this. It's great. I think the challenge for me this year with the change of the PSA time is that I'm actually in class at the time of it, which is why I can't make the PSA meeting. So that in itself is a problem, but that is the ideal setup, right? To be able to just keep it going because you already have the audience. Unfortunately, with this year, it's a conflict thing, right? So I think as a workaround, maybe we can figure out if maybe Melissa, you could say, run it on my behalf while I'm not there. I don't know what the rules are about running Title I meetings without the chair, but those are all valid, and I'm making notes so that we can find out what's going to be the best way to get the maximum participation.
Yeah, or even maybe as another option to have maybe like how we have like Angie giving like a SLT report. Maybe if Melissa's there, she can do like a Title I update, or like, just to hit those points and remind everyone to like refer back to your meeting if you're, if you want to meet together, you and Melissa together leading the meeting at another time.
Yep. And I made note because that is if that's an option, then I would say that is something that we could move forward with. If there aren't any like issues with like me not being present, then I'd be comfortable with that as well. Again, because everyone is there. And then let me just pause because I need to kind of summarize that for everybody else.
Okay.
So primeramente no quiero, la señorita Tiffany, la presidenta de la Asociación de Padres, compartió idea de cómo podemos tener más participación en esta reunión, ya que sucede un día diferente que la reunión de la Asociación de Padres. Nos dio la sugerencia que le pida a la escuela que por favor haga llamada antes y en los boletines que mandamos que pongamos un poquito más de información de qué se trata el título 1. Luego de esa sugerencia, hablamos de otras formas de poder subir la participación en esta reunión. Por ejemplo, tratar de hacer esta reunión directamente después de la reunión de la Asociación de Padres o en el chat, por ejemplo, después de la reunión o antes de la reunión del equipo de liderazgo escolar. El problema en el momento actualmente es que yo no estoy disponible durante el horario de la Asociación de Padres. Entonces, lo que vamos a investigar es si la señorita Meléndez puede hacer la reunión en mi ausencia, ya que yo no puedo asistir. Entonces, hicimos nota de poder, vamos a ver si eso se puede. Entonces, así podemos tratar, ya que tengamos la audiencia de los padres en la reunión de la Asociación de Padres, seguir la reunión directamente después. Okay, so I got the preferences there. I'm just
I
gonna
wanted to make one comment before you keep going.
Yep.
The only thing with piggybacking behind the PSA meeting would have to officially end, and then the Title I meeting starts. And Stacy wrote something about maybe before or after the SLT meeting. The Title I meeting would have to be before the SLT meeting because the information that's gathered in the Title I meeting has to be presented at the SLT meeting.
But awesome. I really like that everybody is thinking about ways that we can maximize attendance and sharing your ideas, because that's the goal of how could we get everyone involved, or as many people as possible involved. We did the poll. And I'm going to share now what the actual amount of the 1% parent involvement fund is. I'm not sure if everyone is aware. Voy a compartir la cantidad que tengamos actualmente, el 1% de para la participación de los padres, y así podemos usar esta información para saber de qué tan grande es nuestra responsabilidad. And now that we'll know this number, we'll know what our responsibilities are as far as being the PAC. So the current amount that we have is $6,768 as the 1% parent engagement set aside. Actualmente tenemos $6,768 como la cantidad, el 1% que dejan para la participación de los padres y familia. It's more than we've had in the past, given the pandemic. Last year, we weren't able to use all of our funds, so they rolled over a little bit of that. Tenemos más que los años anteriores, porque el año pasado no se pudo gastar todo el dinero, entonces lo pasaron para este año. Okay. just a quick review of, there's a lot of information on here, but this one it's in the PowerPoints that I set forth, but I think it was important to kind of repeat it, of examples of what allowable expenditures are for this fund. Es mucha información, pero aquí hay una lista de cuáles son las actividades en que podemos usar el dinero. And I want to make sure I leave time for the brainstorm because we're running tight on time. So hay varias cosas. So there's a lot of things that we actually cannot use the funds for. But anything that falls under these criteria, more or less, we can put forth for approval and try to use the funds for that. Do we have any questions? Stacy, I see your hand.
Yeah, I'm curious what the money actually is used for, because in the past, the workshops I've gone to have always been led by a teacher that's from 376. So then I guess I'm just confused what the money, do we pay the teachers additional outside of their salary to do the workshops?
So if the workshop, la pregunta es, ¿para qué hemos utilizado el dinero en el pasado? So I'm not privy to what was done in the past. I just kind of understand the rules. If any of the workshops require additional materials, so think about last year when you did I think what was it, the Superwoman and the Dad program, as well as like the series that was happening where Ms. Velasquez kind of does art activities, that there are additional materials that are required, that funds can be used to purchase those items. If a workshop takes place outside of school hours, the fund can be used to pay the teachers for that time. So there is regulations on that, or if we have an outside guest speaker or what have you. So anything that requires additional materials and things like that, the Title I funds will cover. As far as I understand in the past, that's how the funds were used, as well as things like when we did book club, purchasing the books in our lending library. So purchasing books and things like that for the lending library. La pregunta fue, ¿para qué se ha utilizado los fondos anterior? Ya que cuando hacen los talleres, es durante el horario de la escuela y son los maestros. Y ahí, si hay un taller que sucede fuera del horario de la escuela, que hay que pagarle a los maestros, se puede utilizar el dinero para pagarle a los maestros las horas adicionales. Al igual que si necesitamos materiales, se puede utilizar el dinero para comprar esos materiales. ¿Se acuerdan? El año pasado hicimos un book club, un club de libros, y también los talleres de Superwoman y I think it was Super Dad, I'm saying it wrong, but para los padres que requieren materiales, el dinero se utilizó para eso. Entonces, todas estas actividades funcionan debajo de estos puntos. Okay. Questions around that, or let me just check the chat really quickly. Okay. So I will say this year, perhaps it may be a little bit challenging because one of the benefits of having the workshops in person and all that is that you purchase the materials, there's things that you're actually physically working with. And so with things being virtual, we do have a little bit of a challenge this year that, we're not necessarily handing out physical materials for these workshops because they're occurring virtually. So we do have to be creative about how we think we're going to spend these funds. Sí tenemos que ser creativos este año porque cuando los talleres son en persona, compramos los materiales, las personas están ahí y se les da los materiales. Ya que estamos funcionando de forma virtual, es un poquito más complicado porque todo es virtual y no estamos dando materiales físicamente. Entonces sí tenemos que pensar cómo vamos a utilizar el dinero. So, some of the stuff that has been proposed so far, just so that I can share thus far as the technology and lending program and some kind of health and fitness activity. Technology lending program consists of currently I think we have 6 Kindles. So something like that. In this case, it wouldn't necessarily be Kindles because truth be told right now, most parents are not using those Kindles. They're not really comfortable with it, although we can expand upon that. The technology lending program would be more around buying devices. So it could be Chromebooks, iPads, whatever, what have you, with the goal of lending them out to parents or helping to bridge that technology gap that we always refer to within the school, being the School of Technology. Again, these are not set. These are ideas that were already proposed. And obviously, under the nutrition and health, some kind of health and fitness activity. So we're not just solely focusing on just academics, but obviously some of the mental aspects of things to do something fun. Hasta ahora tenemos las siguientes ideas propuestas. So, un programa de préstamo tecnológicos, sea tableta, sea computador, que se le podemos comprar y se lo prestamos a los padres con el propósito de aprendizaje, de tratar de aprender más sobre la tecnología con esos, con esos, how do you say device? I'm having a mind lapse. Anyway, con las computadoras o los iPads. Y una actividad de salud o nutrición, algo divertido que podemos hacer como algo de baile o algo así, que no es necesariamente relacionado con los estudios, sino algo como para relajarnos. So the question is, now that you know how much we have, this is our time to brainstorm and use the remaining time to think about how to share your thoughts and ideas about how you think we should utilize the funds. So now I would say it would be open forum, but I would say that let's be mindful of one another, and I'm going to try to acknowledge everyone to try to share out what you're thinking. If you need time to think, I can also, give everybody a moment to kind of stop and consider and come up with your ideas. But the goal now is for us to share out what we're thinking about, what would make sense to do with the funds.
It's
I
Melissa.
think,
One
okay.
suggestion I had was around curriculum and like getting families familiar with the iReady, but also trying to get all the teachers like on the same program. Because last year when my son was in first grade, his teacher used Nearpod, and now he's in second grade and his teacher doesn't use Nearpod. So like maybe talking to the teachers about all like using the same program and how they incorporate it, and getting the parents like a little training on how to use those programs.
Okay.
Melissa, can I ask a question?
Go ahead.
Based on your response, is it a challenge for your son? Because that's more my question is, what are the challenges that our students are having? So is it a challenge for him to transition, or what do you see as the, drawback between the Nearpods being used in first grade and now second grade, he's not using it?
I think in first grade, the Nearpod made it a little bit easier because now the teacher uses the Google Slides. So it's a lot of copying to another slide and to be able to work, because she'll download like a printout. She'll download like a diagram and then, or like paragraphs or like a story, and he has to circle certain words, and he can't do it the way she presents it. So then we have to copy it and put it on a Google slide and go back and forth. With the Nearpod, it was just there and you can work on it.
So you're saying like the digital, like user friendliness of the Nearpod,
Yes.
right? Was easier for your son.
Yes.
And how the trend between the Google slide. I can see that. And I'm talking from a parent and a teacher's perspective. I won't get into it, but I can see that. Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
I think for me, I would like to hear from as many parents on the call, just to know what the challenges are. So then that would make me feel better about what would I want, that would work for everybody. So that's more mine.
That's an excellent suggestion.
Oh, and one last thing, you see those Google Slides, it's very easy to put them in the Nearpod, because Google and Nearpod can work hand in hand. Just if you want to share that with the teacher or recommend that, it can work hand in hand.
So what I'm hearing there is just even Melissa, based on the challenges that you're sharing, is there an opportunity to have even a session where parents, kind of like what Ms. Roden is saying, this is kind of the forum where you're sharing those challenges so that we can kind of compile that and share it back to see what we can do for that, to solve that particular issue as best we can.
No, well, my whole thing was like curriculum and getting the teachers to use like the same program, grade wise or like school wide.
Got it.
Well, I don't know if it's that they're not using it. I think it goes back to teacher preference and how the kids are receiving the work, because I think with Miss Gambino, she uses a variety of different ones, but then she goes back to the kids, and I've heard her ask them, well, how do you feel about this one? Do you prefer this over this? And I think it's the kids, the consensus of the classroom is, you know, kind of dictates how they present certain subjects. Now, if one teacher is using Nearpod and another one is using iReady and then another one, I just think it just becomes access for them to learn more skills, you know? So how do you feel about that, Melissa?
I don't want to get in a whole discussion on how the teachers work or how the curriculum is going, but to get a grade wide, like whole first grade or whole second grade, whole third grade, and depending on their what is that? Their programs, their lesson plans, and what works best, and having these programs available grade wide.
Okay, so I'm just in the interest of time, I'm gonna jump in so that I can hear from other parents, but I would just say that I made note of that. I think it does get a little bit more complicated in that regard, because what works best for one doesn't necessarily work best for the other. So we could get into some pretty challenging conversations there, maybe come up with a way to discern that, right? Like, how can we measure that? And I just want to pause for a second just so I can articulate that to everyone what the basis of the conversation is. Actualmente estamos hablando de algunos de los problemas que está pasando con, bueno, en el momento la señorita Melissa con los diferentes programas que actualmente utilizamos en la escuela y la preferencia de usar algo consistente a nivel de cada grado. Si hay forma de hacer eso. Entonces, acabo de apuntar de cómo podemos dialogar o saber que si es una opción de tener un programa para cada grado. De igual forma, tenemos que estar conscientes de que cada estudiante, la forma de aprendizaje es diferente para cada estudiante. Entonces, lo que funciona para uno no necesariamente funciona para el otro. Entonces, tenemos que estar conscientes de eso. Okay, so keeping in mind that, and Stacy, I see your hand, keeping in mind that potentially that, again, going back to my initial point about operating virtually, there may not necessarily be a cost associated with kind of putting that workshop together. There's still the question of the funds and thinking about how we could use those. So in theory, I guess if we did put together a workshop to kind of discuss challenges and how we can address it, whether it's how to better use, you know, Google Slides or Nearpod or what have you, in theory, if it were happening after our hours in accordance with preferences, parent preferences, there could potentially be a cost associated with it. I'm actually going to go back to the parent survey. That's why it's very important that everybody complete the survey. That survey will inform what workshops the school will put forth, as well as preferences regarding time, day, and those things. The questions are specifically tailored for that, so that we have a better understanding on what workshops will make sense for parents. Likewise, it's not a survey that has been put forth specifically by Title I PAC, but there is overlap in that the results from that survey can inform Title I, you know, spending. De igual forma, quiero volver al principio y poner énfasis en la importancia de llenar la encuesta de los padres. Los resultados de esa encuesta va a informar cuáles son los talleres y la preferencia de los padres que va a hacer la escuela. Entonces, de esa forma, es muy importante que lo llenen y que digan su opinión y así podemos saber cómo se va a utilizar. Se puede probablemente usar los fondos del título 1, el 1%, porque no es todo. All right. So, Stacy, I saw your hand, so I want to give you an opportunity to share and speak up.
Thank you. Yeah. The one thing I was thinking is based off my experience, like I really wanted to go to the math workshop recently and I didn't get to go. And there's nothing like that they could share with me. So I wonder if some of the funds could be like a way to preserve the video or to create a handout or something so that you could go back to it later. Cause I think we know that not everyone can come to these workshops. And then maybe also, like for example, like the book club last year, like maybe there was a way for, I couldn't join all of those, but I would have really liked to have maybe gotten the book and maybe like seen the discussion in some ways, like some permanence. I don't know if we can spend the money on like making the workshops like accessible later. And a similar idea, just throwing it out there, is like, I don't know if there's a way to have like a tech person or a tutor. Like what if we had like, I don't know, what if there was like a helper, like a helpline every Friday from 2 to 3 or something for parents to call? I'm just trying to think of things that are more accessible to everyone or at any time.
Awesome. Thank you. I made note of those.
Mary Louise has a comment.
Hi. I really like Stacy's idea actually about having like a tech person that, yeah, like once a week, like that you could spend those funds to pay that person, or just even if they took like calls for an hour or two, a couple times a week or something. That's a really interesting way to use it. And then the other thing, and maybe this is obvious, but like, you know, you could still do workshops and maybe you could like put together kits. I don't know if there's like, I feel like there are companies out there now who probably would do this for us if we just pay them, where maybe it's something like, you know, a life coach kind of person who can help people with resume writing. I know that they've done that before, but just helping people get the resources to do that. And also, you know, even if it's like more of a fun thing where it's like a craft or something like that, like you could still spend the money and pay for materials, but they just have to pick up kits. It's the way that I would do it. But I do like, I like thinking in the way that Stacy is about finding things that like resources that people could utilize more regularly. Just something to research. I can look into that more too and offer some suggestions in the future. That's all.
Thank you. Just for the benefit of I've got to see who's still here.
I think you have
let's go ahead.
nothing to say.
Okay, I just want to just quickly summarize in Spanish, just because again we got to make sure we get everyone. La sugerencia que acaban de compartir es si se puede crear una forma como el club de libro, pero bueno, let me backtrack. Si se puede crear una forma de compartir los talleres en una forma continua, o sea, se graban los videos, si hay una forma de poder compartirlo, ya que los padres algunas veces no pueden asistir y actualmente no hay forma de compartir eso como de largo plazo. Algo como, por ejemplo, cuando hicimos el club de libros el año pasado, si podemos comprar los libros a todos, aunque no puedan asistir en persona, pero si hay una forma de poder compartir y compartir con las personas, por ejemplo, ya puede leer el libro y después ver cuál fue la discusión entre el grupo. De igual forma, si se puede buscar una persona que puede asistir 1 o 2 veces a la semana con los problemas técnicos. Si le podemos pagar a alguien, como sea los viernes, que se ponga, que hable, pueda coger llamadas para ayudar con los problemas técnicos. Y para los talleres, aunque sean virtual, si hay forma de comprar como los materiales y hacérselo llegar a los participantes. Aunque todavía sea virtual, si hay forma, como si, por ejemplo, como cuando Ms. Velasco hizo el taller de arte, podemos hacer los kits y se lo podemos compartir a todos los participantes y lo pueden hacer de su casa. Okay. All right.
Hey, I have a question. This is Annie.
Mm-hmm.
The first comment was for the technology lending program, like would all the funds will be used for that program or would it be just some? And who would like run it? I think that would be a good program. But I feel like it just needs to be executed well. And the second one is maybe a workshop on how to like pick a middle school. Because we do have fifth graders and present and fourth graders that will later on graduate out. And even for parents that have kids in the earlier ages to just know like the process of how to go through a school CEP just to see where they stand, or just go to different websites and just see what this school may offer versus the other schools, and see if this school is, you know, a good fit for my child or not. And then the third one was like the school and district accountability. I think more parents need to be involved, but I'm not sure how we would do that as a workshop. I think that's a very important topic. I will have to think about it a little bit more, but I think that one topic that's very important. So we can start holding people accountable of things in the district as well as on school level.
Okay. So let me just, as I speak, I'll try to remember. So the first question was the technology lending program, who would run it and how would that work? That would be part of the conversation that we would have to have. But for example, in the past with like the Kindles that we purchased, those are currently housed with the PSA, and the PSA manages that because you are the parent constituency group. And so there has to be a conversation around whether that would still be the case where if we were to create a technology lending program, if that would fall under the ownership of the PSA to manage. But obviously it would have greater conversation on what that program looks like how would we go about lending? Is it short-term, long-term, and all those things? So that's part of the conversation. And the second part is the discussion about how much of the fund would go is kind of what the function of this group is, right? So now that we know how much we have, if we do choose to move forward with the technology lending program, how much of that of the funds would we be willing to put forth for to purchase devices? I can tell you that on average, the least expensive device right now, which is like a Chromebook, I think is about $340. So you still could purchase a substantial amount of devices and still have quite a bit of the fund left over. Again, it's like reverse engineering. We have to decide what we want to, if we decide, hey, we're going to do an art workshop or there's a Zumba class and it only costs $100 to have the instructor, you still have quite a bit of the fund left. So we have to kind of work through that. And that's kind of the role that we'll have. I don't remember the second question, but let me just restate that.
The second one was not a question. It was more of a comment. Sorry. It was more like to do a workshop on how to select a middle school.
Yes. Okay.
For your next step and your like in a student career, and to help a parent to even someone younger, just to figure out what's the next step, because I don't really see too many of that helping parents research like how to look at the school CEP to see if
I got you. Okay.
the school or just their mission statement,
right,
see
the
if that
process,
aligns with their child.
Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect. I got it. And then the third one was on accountability and just kind of emphasizing the point of like parent involvement and understanding the operations of school. Okay.
Yes.
And I'll do this really fast. We are over on time. The goal was to do this in an hour, but I think we're sharing great ideas, so I don't want to cut us off. And I do want to hear from some of the other parents as well. Let me just quickly recap. La pregunta que lo que acabamos de compartir es relacionado con el programa tecnológico, cómo funcionaría, quién estará encargado de ese programa. Y en el pasado, la Asociación de Padres se encarga de las tecnologías. Lo digo basado en que hemos en el pasado comprado los Kindles y eso actualmente están con la Asociación de Padres. Entonces, podríamos hacerlo de esa forma, pero la función de este grupo es hacer eso y dialogar de cómo funcionaría el programa y quién estaría encargado. y si sería un programa de para prestar las computadoras o las tabletas a largo plazo y todos esos detalles. De igual forma tendríamos que hablar de, I forgot what my second point was. Anyway, I'll come back to that. El segundo punto, un moment, era relacionado con la necesidad de un taller para los estudiantes en el quinto o antes que se van a graduar de cómo elegir la escuela, las escuelas y el proceso, de orientar a los padres del proceso y de saber cómo leer o revisar los documentos de la escuela para entender la función y las metas de la escuela. Y el tercer punto es relacionado con la contabilidad de los padres y saber la importancia de participar en la escuela. Okay. So it was really fast and really brief. Is there, okay, so I think I heard from most folks. Angie, did you want to chime in? Sorry to put you on the spot. I'm like,
no, it's okay. I think there's some great ideas being thrown out, but I think that it's going to take a little time to think through too, because there are so many things that are already eaten by the school. It's hard to come up with something that legitimately you can use the money for. So I think there has to be just a little more thought given to that. I'm actually thinking, I'll let you know if I think of anything else, but no. I think it comes down. The only thing I can think of is even if it's, and I don't know how to do this, because the thing is with Title I, when you throw something out there, you have to give it to the whole parent base. But the budget doesn't necessarily fit for the whole parent base, depending on what it is you want to offer. So I was thinking of even like subscriptions to certain materials or certain computer programs, or, you know, because sometimes that's an issue too. Some people don't have Word, some people don't have, you know, sometimes that pops up too for parents. But again, you would have to offer that to all 500 families, and you can't afford that for 500 families unless you're able to negotiate something with the company. So, you know, I was thinking something along those lines, not necessarily technology, but just the supplements that go along with the technology that might be useful for some families. And I don't really, like, again, I don't really know exactly what, but those are some of my thoughts. The same thing even for online subscriptions to certain supplemental educational materials. That's something that can also be offered to families, because, you know, educational magazines come in digital formats as well. And that's something that might be utilized by certain families. But that's really it. And Melissa, by the way, to help you with some of those Google Docs, Kami Notes, there's an extension that you can use to make notations on PDFs and documents a lot easier. And I know that Noah uses that a lot with his programs when he's doing work in school. It's free, and it's just like, you know, you look it up and you get it. It's Kami, it's Kami, and it's used to help to annotate documents a little easier.
all right, thank you. And then I think, so S. Thompson, sorry, and then I need you to share your name. Necesito que comparte el nombre, está en el iPhone, on the iPhone, engineer's iPhone, I'm sorry. I didn't catch the name.
That's Reina.
Reina, okay, Reina, perdón, sorry, sorry. Did you want to add? ¿Quiere compartir algo?
Pues no, parece que hasta el momento todo está bien. Muchas gracias. Yo las apoyo.
Ok, gracias. Sí, este es el momento de compartir. Si tiene alguna idea de cómo utilizar los fondos, o si le ocurre una idea en otra ocasión, por favor, déjenos saber.
Ok.
Okay. Okay, so we have such an abundance of ideas, and you guys are gonna laugh at me because I did something really quirky, but sorry, that was for the brainstorm to inspire thoughts. I was gonna give you time to think, but this is an active group, so we didn't really need it. We talked about that, and this is the quirky thing, and we're all too familiar with the circle map, so I was gonna plug the brainstorms in here, which I will do, and I'll share it out to everyone. Just everything that we talked about, where I was gonna actively put them in here. We love the circle map, don't we? Aquí voy a poner todas las ideas de que acabamos de hablar para que tengamos a visual, algo visual para ver todo lo que hablamos. Truthfully, I think the next steps is to kind of organize these ideas and figure out what truthfully would even be approved under the lens of like all the activities that are approvable under the Title I, and then essentially have the same conversation of kind of narrow down which ones would make the most sense based on, like, I like the way Ms. Roden positioned it, of like the biggest challenges or the challenges that we're trying to tackle on a school-wide scale, and then go ahead and put some numbers against that. So let me just see. We don't have to do that. So yeah, so essentially this document that I'm sharing, and I'll go back to the chat, I would have to work to kind of complete this, to kind of outline what the proposal would be so that we have something to review, and we would put it forth to SLT to get their input as well, and then essentially work on finalizing on how we would ultimately spend the money. But obviously that would require just a quick check-in again with the group to essentially sign off and say, okay, yes, we're in agreement. Naively, I thought maybe we would get to that today, but I know that we have a lot of ideas on how we wanted to spend the funds. But this is basically what the structure would be to outline that, and then ultimately put a number against each item. Thoughts, questions, concerns? Personally, so I have requested, just so everyone's aware as far as like all the things, so I will be as a Title I PAC chairperson, I will be looking at the results of the parent survey. So I will have visibility into what parent preferences are to mirror against kind of like what we discussed here today, as well as what existing workshops are on the calendar for the school, right? There potentially are some of the ideas that you have shared potentially are on the calendar for the school year already. So there's some work that has to happen on my end just to kind of align all of the powers that be, as well as some of the stuff that like the PSA is working on, to see where potentially that could be. To Angie's point earlier, the challenge is that not everything has a cost associated with it, and not everything, we don't have enough money to make every single thing accessible to everyone. And so there's a little bit of legwork that has to happen there to kind of finalize this. So yeah. Let me see. I think that was it. Does anybody have questions, thoughts, concerns? And I haven't, I guess I'll put it in the chat. It's not the formal way to do it, but maybe I'll encourage you to, Tiffany, are you still on? I think she might not be on. Is Mary Louise on, or is everybody dropped off? I'll email them.
No, I'm here.
Oh, there you go. Annie's on.
And,
So Katrina. I might, sorry guys, I didn't mean to disregard you. I'm like, I might ask you that if you have further ideas, I'm going to piggyback and try to utilize the PSA's email. So encourage people that if they have ideas, thoughts, to just forward them along to the PSA email, and then I will connect with them to figure out if there's anything coming through there.
Sounds good.
Let's see. Sorry, Stacy, I just saw the comment that you posted here. Maybe people should be assigned to figure out how much different ideas would cost. IP would be a good workshop, what they are. Also best practice workshops from the teachers that can help parents navigate the digital learning space. Okay. So because the chat gets saved, I'm gonna make note. So Stacy, functionally, that's the role of myself and Melissa here, to do the legwork in trying to find out the cost associated with most of these things. And then when we circle back, so for example, with, like I mentioned, I know I threw that figure out with, like, if we did do a technology lending program, if we know the cost of a computer, iPad, or whatever, we can collectively decide, well, are we spending all of it? Do we want to buy 2, do we buy 3, and those kinds of things. When we know how much things cost, then we can kind of decide. Or if something is cost prohibitive, then we know that we would unfortunately have to eliminate it.
Well, mostly I just wanted to say, like, please give us tasks if you feel like if something's too much work.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I will, and I mean, you're open to do that. Of all the ideas that we discussed, part of the us having all being members of the PAC is that when we have these meetings, you're open to share what you found as you've been, you know, as if you did any research and so forth, and put it forth to us. Really, our job is fill out the documentation, make sure we relay, we speak on everyone's behalf accurately with the SLT, and that the other way around, where I'm also relaying any information that I received the other way. So, okay, I thank you so much for staying. We went over as well, but this is obviously very important. Please look out for the next meeting. In theory, these are supposed to be monthly, but I'm gonna connect with the powers that be to figure out if piggybacking on the PSA's meeting time is okay, because I agree with everyone's suggestion on maximizing the parent audience. That information may come, confirmation of that may come through by way of email and not necessarily a meeting invite, but that please stay tuned for that as well. Gracias por su tiempo. Nos pasamos por un poquito de tiempo, pero es muy importante que hablemos de este tema. Voy a averiguar si se puede hacer esta reunión directamente después de la reunión de la Asociación de Padres. Y si se puede, se lo vamos a comunicar por vía de correo electrónico y por ahí estaremos en contacto. Thank you, everyone. This was a lot of information, I know. Please reach out if you have any additional questions, or if you're researching and you come across some information that may be of use as we try to sort through everyone's suggestions. Thank you. I think it was questions. Yep, questions, and I think we're good.
Gracias.
Gracias a usted.
Gracias, Melissa. Gracias, Andreina.
Gracias. Thank you all.
Gracias, Angie, te veo.
All right, let me see, where am I?
Bye bye, Reina.
Bye, te cuidas.
Okay, igual, mi amor.
Bye, bye, Melissa.
Okay, everyone have a good evening. I'm just closing this out.
Everybody.
And thank you. I can't say thank you enough.
Good night. You're doing an